Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you guys hear me loud and clear? Okay, good, guys, that's the second time I've tried to copy this file, and it looks like there's more corruption. Hold on a second. I know it works on the other computer. I'm just copying it to a USB stick to get onto my studio computer, and there seems to be difficulties. So just bear with me one more second. I'm sorry about this. Yay, that seemed to work. Geez, started to get a heart attack there. I'm thinking, oh my, can't be corrupted. I tried it on my other computer and it wasn't corrupted, and I kept on copying it to the USB stick. I think it's because I didn't have enough space on my C drive. Then I cleaned up the space and just copied it directly to my documents folder instead of the actual USB drive, and it seemed to work. So we're going to get started here, guys. Sorry about that. I appreciate your patience there. Just give me a little second to get set up here, shut off the lights, and let's get going. All right, get my clicker going and everything. I'm going to do a little bit of a test here to make sure that my Stream Deck works correctly. Hey guys, how you doing? Okay, so we're going to get started. I really appreciate everyone waiting around there. I'm sorry I don't make a habit of starting 10 minutes late, although that started to freak me out. And every time I copied it, it was about a gigabyte that I had to copy onto a really old USB stick, so it took some time. Okay, welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone coming out here and joining me again for another class. My name is Professor Ryan Clements, and we are looking, this is NETS1028, and it's Linux Systems Security, one of my favorite classes, and because I love Linux and I love security. So let's get going. I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of this class and what we're going to do. I like to start with a little bit of an overview so you guys get an idea of where we're starting and where we're ending up. We are first going to talk about the SSH protocol. Does anyone in chat, and just put it in chat if you have or not, does anyone have any experience with the SSH protocol or know what that is? And if you don't, it's okay. We're going to take you from step one here. From the survey, I get that a lot of people do not have a lot of experience with Linux and Linux technology. So we're going to go a little slow in this class, but next class we're ramping. Well, this class is a little quicker than last class. We're going to learn a lot of technologies. We're going to do a lot of hands-on labs. So hopefully you got your CentOS stuff ready. And your Xshell ready from the assignment I posted on Sunday. Sorry about that. That was a bit later than I wanted that to be. And you get another week, by the way. You get till next Monday to hand in that assignment. But I hope that you guys had some time to install CentOS 8 and go through the YouTube video. I saw that there was about 30 views of that video since it's been posted. So I know a lot of you guys have been checking it out. Okay, secure shell, very good. Stephen and Tanya, yes, use SH keys, very good. Yeah, we're going to be using some SSH keys today. We're going to be setting up the CentOS box and doing that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about passwords versus SSH keys and why we shouldn't use passwords if we can get away by using SSH keys instead. We're going to talk about DNF, which is dandified yum, and that's a funny word, but that's what they called it. And if you have any experience with previous versions of CentOS, like CentOS 7 or RHEL 7 or whatever, they used yum instead. DNF, it's actually not capitals. I don't know why I capitalized it. It's all lowercase. DNF is a command that replaced yum, and they called it dandified yum. And it has some really good reasons why they use it. You can update deltas of package instead of updating the whole package now. So that's what we use in CentOS 8 and RHEL 8 going forward. We're going to talk about automatic updating, how we can keep Linux systems automatically updated. Now, that's probably not a problem if you have a GUI and stuff, but we're taking a stance of this is a Linux system that you're installing on a data center, and this is something that you'd be setting up for a corporate environment. You know, no Ubuntu servers, no Ubuntu workstations, you know, CentOS and RHEL. And so how would you get automatic updating working on CentOS? And there's a few different ways that we could do that. I'm going to show you two. There's actually about 3 accepted ways. I'll show you 2 at the end, and we can do some labs on those. And then we're going to finish up. We're going to talk about Cockpit. And Cockpit is probably something that, I don't know, put it in chat if you guys have any experience with Cockpit. Cockpit is a really cool tool that RHEL has developed, Red Hat has developed for RHEL, and it's made its way into CentOS because CentOS is just upstream of RHEL. Cockpit allows us to manage Linux systems instead of using all the commands. Instead of using an actual GUI, we get to use a web browser to manage a lot of stuff. So I'm going to finish up and talk about that. It's going to be really cool. We're going to the things that we're going to discuss today, we're going to be going over with a fine-tooth comb. It's a little slower than I would like, but I want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind because these are the fundamentals that we're going to use for the rest of the class and build and build and build on them. Set up a Red Hat satellite. No, Chris, but that would be awesome. We might get into that depending on, you know, how quickly we can move in this course. It's not Red Hat satellite. Red Hat satellite is something completely different. That would be a whole course by itself. I do talk about it, and I will make references to it. No experience in Cockpit. Okay, no problem. No worries. Okay. So let's get started. Let's talk about SSH shells. Oh, right. Well, what is an SSH shell? An SSH shell is, Tanya's already said, that it's, or Steven has already said, it's a secure shell. And it is a network protocol that is used everywhere in Linux. A lot of places in non-Linux too. You use SSH for network gear, but network gear is usually based on a Unix or a NIX environment. I've seen SSH used quite extensively in Windows environments now as well. The new Windows servers actually have an SSH server built into the Windows server. Typically before, we had to add like an SSAP server or an SSH server by third-party programs and tack that onto the Windows 2008 or 2012 server. I believe in 2012, the later versions of 2012, they started integrating SSH, and I know in 2000, was it 18 or 19 or what's the latest versions? It's integrated fully. So SSH is something you're going to want to get to know very well because you're going to be using it in a lot of different environments in a corporate environment. The service on Linux is called SSHD. So that's SSH, and then the D stands for something called daemon. And it's daemon, but with an A in it. You'll see it in the from here and there, and some people like to call it a daemon. It's really not a daemon. We pronounce it daemon. So SSHD, the D means daemon, and that just means it's something that runs in the background at all the time without user interaction. It's a service. It runs on port 22 TCP, and that's very important because you're going to see that a lot. So remember, ingrain that in your head. It's port 22. Oops, I didn't mean to go ahead yet. It uses cryptography to secure a connection. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys this. How much do you know about cryptography? And are you currently taking it this semester? Because I know a lot of people, some it's offered in different semesters and whatnot. And some people have taken the courses before this and taking the prerequisites that had cryptography in it. And I know some people have proven, I know in the past, some people have proven to the dean and everything that they do have the ability to take this course without taking some of the prerequisites. So give me a feel in chat. How much do you guys know about cryptography? Taking it this semester. Yasmin, what course are you taking cryptography in? Because it's fundamentally important to understand cryptography, but I don't want to teach it at the same time and waste time in this course if you're already being taught. No, not this semester taking this. So some people have, some people haven't. Yeah, Lily, the basics I taught in CST, and Lily, we didn't just teach the basics. We got right into it, right? I think we got into cryptography more than a lot do. I took 3 courses to do cryptography, and I can throw those in here if we had time. I'd love to, or really do a fast-paced one, but. Applied cryptography, yes, this semester with Aaron Chow. Oh, cool, Aaron Chow. Okay, good. Applied cryptography. Okay, so how far have you guys got in cryptography? I know it's only been one day, but you know, has you explained the basics? Do we know what the differences between symmetric and asymmetric is, or that's down the line? But anyways, that's good that you're taking applied cryptography. Good stuff. When I'm talking about cryptography, if I get a little bit into the weeds and you guys don't get a little bit lost about what I'm talking about in cryptography, you got to let me know. I will take some time, 30 minutes, to give you a rundown of what I'm talking about. It'll be a real like fire hose session, but it's important to understand. So cryptography, what I'm talking about here is that cryptography encrypts messages, encrypts data. So SSH has some cipher suites in there, and cipher is just an algorithm to encrypt data. Cipher suites, and it uses like AES 256 and all that stuff to encrypt the data going back and forth between you and that server. So SSH is very secure by nature. We always want to use SSH. If some of you are old enough to remember, the protocol before SSH used to be Telnet, and Telnet had no cryptography or no security involved. So if someone was sitting on your network watching your packets go back and forth, they could see exactly what you were doing. Not cool stuff, but SSH has solved that. It is converting plain text to ciphertext and back. Very good. Yeah, okay. Yeah, SSH is a replacement of Telnet. We still use Telnet from day to day. Telnet wouldn't have been installed on your minimal install for Linux But we use Telnet still to check open ports, like TCP ports that you can check with Telnet. You can't check UDP ports with Telnet. You could use Netcat and different methods, but I install Telnet all the time, not as the server, but just as checking ports. And it's a really easy way. We're probably going to use that quite a few times in this course. You'll see me use Telnet, but I'm not using Telnet for communications, just to see if there's a port open, okay? Yeah, internet service. Okay, so what SSH does allows us to log on to a remote machine. So I know a lot of you guys have a lot of experience with SSH. I just want to take a second and really make the people understand that don't understand. So let's say this is your machine, okay? You are here, okay? You are here, and this is your VM, okay? This is your CentOS VM, okay? On here, we have SSH daemon, okay, and it's running on port 22, and this is going to go outside of the box, TCP, okay? And so it's listening here. It's got a port opening, listening for anything that comes in there. And so you here are on your computer, and you run, you know, Xshell, which I don't know why it starts with an S. Does it start with an S? Starts with an X. What are you doing? Xshell. Okay. And Xshell uses the SSH protocol to connect to things. And so you make a connection out to that CentOS VM, and that SSH daemon is listening on your CentOS VM, and it allows Xshell to connect to it. And then once you do that, you can get a shell, like a bash shell on here. And bash shell is just, you know, the terminal that, you know, you can type commands in and whatnot. And that's how SSH works. The daemon listens, and you use an SSH client, and it connects into the CentOS VM, and then it gives you like your bash shell or something, so you can start typing commands. If you didn't have this SSH client, the only way you can get into the CentOS VM is using the VM console, which sucks, and you know you can't copy and paste sometimes. It's really small, annoying, and so we don't want to do that. We want to stay away from consoling this. In a corporate environment, you would only console if SSH is not working. You would never just console a machine. That's bad habit. It sucks too. It's a bad interface. So you always want to be using Xshell and an SSH client to connect into an SSH server or an SSH daemon on the server. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Just let me know in chat if it doesn't. I'm going to keep moving on. Okay, so we can use two different methods to log into SSH daemons on the server. We can use passwords, which is kind of the legacy way of doing things. And 99% of people still use passwords, and that's fine. I mean, passwords serve a purpose. But in a corporate environment where we want things to be very secure, and I'm going to talk about this a little more, why they're so secure, we want to use SSH keys. And that is something called asymmetric cryptography. And if you're taking that applied cryptography with Mr. Aaron Chow, who's awesome, you eventually will get to a point where you talk about asymmetric cryptography. Do not skip those classes. Do pay so much attention, because the differences between symmetric and asymmetric cryptography can be confusing at first. But asymmetric cryptography runs the world. If you understand asymmetric cryptography, you will understand the world, the internet, okay? If you don't, you think it's all magic unicorns, okay? So don't worry, I'm not going to get into asymmetric cryptography. Let Mr. Aaron Chow take care of that. And maybe I'll do a little rundown, give you some of my other slides from another class, from my Intro to Computer Security, for people who are not taking applied cryptography. So maybe you can look over that and get an idea of what asymmetric cryptography is. But anyways, SSH keys here are based on asymmetric cryptography. And one of the asymmetric ciphers that we use for asymmetric cryptography is called RSA. Okay, and that stands not for anything really cool. That actually, RSA stands for the initials of the guys who created the RSA algorithm, or the asymmetric algorithm that we use for public and private key pairs. So I'm not going to try to repronounce their name. I forget their name. They're weird names. that I never can pronounce correctly, and when I even try to pronounce correctly, I can't. So I'm not gonna go through that. Not gonna embarrass myself. I'm just gonna continue on here. Okay, so we are going to do, I have a pre-recording of an SSH demonstration using Xshell. And so this is just what you have done in your previous assignment if you've done it. And if you haven't done it, don't worry, just go ahead and watch this. Now, this recording I made, the quality is not the greatest. I uploaded it to YouTube and made the video, rendered the video, and I was like, ooh, why is the quality so bad? But I didn't have time to go back and redo it, so I will redo this. But this is the only video that has kind of weird text that it's a little unreadable. So bear with me. The YouTube video is on this link, and the link is actually in the weekly learning section. And all the links that I have up on these PowerPoint slides will be in the weekly learning section for lesson 2 of this week. So you don't have to try to copy this off by hand or something. Now, this demonstration uses password authentication. If you've done the assignment or you followed along with my YouTube video, this is something that you've probably already done. So I'm going to go and, but I didn't, I'm going to go ahead and show this, and it's only about 5 minutes, so we're going to watch it and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. Sorry, I didn't have my desktop audio on here, and I'm going to get it started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and log into this machine using the SSH protocol. And we're going to do that using Xshell, which I have already set up, and you should have already set up during the last assignment. So I'm on my Linux machine through VMware on the console, and first I'm going to double check to see even if the SSH daemon is running. So I'm going to go systemctl status sshd and press enter. And I can see that the SSH daemon is running because it says active running right here. I can also do an SSS tulpin, and this is called, this is a way of looking at the open ports on the machine. And I'm just going to do a shift / there and then grep :22 to see if the service is listing on 22, and there it is. So right now SSH daemon is running and it is listing on port 22. I have confirmed that. So I'm going to go over to my Xshell here, and I'm going to double click on my NETS1028 CentOS 8 machine, which I've already added in the proper host and port in here, and it's the SSH protocol. I'm going to double click on that. It's going to ask me for the user I would like to log in with. I'm going to type Ryan because that is my main user, and now it's asking me for my password. Now you'll notice here, and we're going to talk about this section a little more, but right now I'm just going to provide a password, but you can also see there's something called a public key here, which we'll talk a little later on about in the future. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and type in my password and press enter. And there it is. It says connection established, and I'm in. And I can even double check. I'm going to host name. It says CentOS1. I press W. It's been up for about 20 hours or so with 2 users on. So I have successfully logged into this machine. Now, if you weren't able to successfully log into this machine, it would try to connect for a little bit. It would say connecting, but it wouldn't say connection established. You would throw an error, say can't connect. And if that's the case, you might not have the networking information set up correctly on your machine here. So it's always good to check IP /4 A and double check to see if the networking information, your INET information, is set up correctly. And IP /R to make sure that your route is set up correctly. And you can even go so far to do nmcli connection C, and then S for show ENS33 and then I'm hitting shift / and then grep IPv4 and double check to see if those settings look correct too. And if you did the last lab and went through my YouTube video, these settings should already be set up for you, and you should already have a static IP and your gateway and your DNS already set up. But those are things to check to see if, just to make sure if for some reason you can't get in using Xshell here and you don't get a connection established. And the last thing you can double check to see is sometimes the system, sometimes a service the SSH daemon is down. I'm going to go ahead and take this down manually. So I'm going to go systemctl stop sshd, and it's asking me to authenticate as root. I'm just going to go put in the root password, and there you go. So if I go systemctl status sshd, you can see no longer is that daemon running anymore. It says loaded, inactive. No, it says inactive, dead. So I can see on this side, I'm still logged in. It still allows me to log in, but it's not going to let me create another connection. So I'll show you. If I log out by typing exit and try to log back in, I'm just going to go open and then try to log back in. It's just saying connecting, and it won't actually connect anymore. This is what's going to happen if that SSH daemon is down. So in that case, all you want to do is make sure you start it with systemctl again, start SSHD, and it's going to ask me to authenticate as root. I'll put the root password in, and I'm just going to go double check the status of it, and there it's running again. So I can double check, go back to here, press Alt-O for open, and press enter to connect to this host, and it's going to ask me for my username again. I'm going to provide that and the password, and then I'm able to log in again. So if you can't log in, there's a few things that you need to check there, and hopefully I've gone over them for you. Okay, so that's how, that's just a little demonstration of logging on with passwords and then making sure that the SSH daemon is up and running, and how you can check that to make sure that it is. And Yash, that's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked that question there. Yash says, can we use netstat instead? No, you can't. Now, I understand why you asked the question, because historically netstat has been something that we've used in the past and people have used in the past. And, you know, old habits die hard, right? But netstat is one of those programs that that have been around for like 10 years, but have been deprecated now. So we no longer use netstat. Netstat is gone. And in fact, if you're on your CentOS 8 machine, go ahead and type netstat. Netstat, and there's no N here. This is all lowercase. Go ahead and type netstat on your CentOS 8 machine right now and press enter. Guaranteed, you will not have a netstat command. Won't be there. Red Hat has deprecated netstat in favor for SS, which is part of the IP suite now. So there's a lot of commands that have been deprecated now that are not usable unless you try to go out specifically and try to shoehorn them into your machine. Let me go ahead over that and start talking about those, because I know a lot of people maybe on Ubuntu or Debian, they still use netstat and ifconfig and all that stuff, but that's no longer used anymore in modern RHEL and CentOS and enterprise machines. And so you should probably try to get off of using those. It's really bad habit to continue to use them. Red Hat has deprecated them like actually about 5 years ago, and finally with RHEL 8, actually RHEL 7 they weren't even installed. RHEL 8, I don't even think you can use that. You can't even find them. They just didn't even make the packages anymore. So here are a couple things that we do not want to use anymore. So netstat, okay, is gone. So these are all deprecated, okay. So netstat, ifconfig, which is a big one that I still see people use, and I cringe every time I see it. What are some other ones? Route. There's lots of them, okay? And these were the old commands that people used to use a long time ago, and up until actually I still see people in my team use them. If it's not a RHEL 7 machine or CentOS 8 machine, they have these installed, and a baby kitten dies every time I see this happen, because the real commands that we should be using, so netstat has been replaced with SS, okay? And ifconfig has been replaced with IP, A, and the whole IP stack. IP route is now IPR. So the whole IP stack here and SS, all these commands are no longer used in Rail 7, Rail 8 and beyond. Actually, even Rail 7 and CentOS 7, we weren't even supposed to be using those, but people still shoehorn them in because they found the packages. But these are the replacements now. So you know how you always see me type stuff like IP-4A when I'm looking for like all the IPv4 information. IP is the command you're going to want to use. ifconfig, you still might have it, but don't, you know, on different like Kali and stuff like that. But I think on the new versions of Kali and Ubuntu, the IP suite is also installed. So get used to using the new commands. You know, if you go into a corporation and they're using newer Linux software and you start typing this stuff in, someone might cringe as well. So, okay, try to get away from that. And change is slow, that's right. Traceroute, no, Traceroute's still around, I believe, Yash. I have to type it in. I forget. I believe Traceroute is still the command in there. Okay, so just be aware of that. So when you're looking at port information, don't try to use netstat anymore, especially on CentOS 8. It won't even work. You have to use SS. And what I always use to try to find good port information, I always just remember it like this: SS and then dash TULPN. And this is how Red Hat will teach you to use to look at open ports as well. And the way someone said this to me a long time ago when I was going through my Red Hat training, and they said SS-TULPN, like tall pin, but it's TULPN. That's how I always remember it. I never remember TU. I just remember tall pin. I heard the one someone said it once, and I just always remember that's how it's said. It's kind of confusing and it's hard to remember, but if you remember it like that, it's very easy. And then you can just basically, like, if you just type this in by itself, you'll bring up all the ports on the Linux system. We're going to be using this quite extensively as we do some forensics and stuff to see what's running and, you know, rootkitting and all that stuff. And, you know, so we're going to be using this in great detail. You're going to get a lot of use out of that. Okay, that was a great question. I really love when there's interaction like that and you guys catch me on some things maybe that I haven't mentioned. Okay, so this is the first lab. Now I am going to we're going to skip over this first lab because I believe that most people have done it on the assignment already. So that was just basically what we were discussing. We were showing you how to log into CentOS VM using Xshell, but using a password to authenticate. And so if you haven't done this, you can use this video, obviously, and there's a video on the weekly learning section on how to do this. But you can also use the steps outlined in assignment 1, section 1.2, install Xshell. And it tells you how to install Xshell. It shows you how to connect to your machine and everything. All right, so again, I'm going to skip over this one. If you haven't done it, make sure you get it. And we're going to continue on because there's another lab which we're going to do. And it's on SSH keys and setting those up. And I'm going to make you do that in class. We're going to have an interactive lab on that one. Where do you upload the assignment after finishing it? Wow, you already finished? You can upload that just to the assignment section, right? You know, submit assignments right on Blackboard. You can take my my docx format, and by the way, does docx work for everyone? I just want to make sure, like, someone's not using some weird flavor of Mac that docx doesn't work. Just let me know. You can just take my docx format, edit it, put in your answers in there, and then just upload it to Blackboard, and I'll look at it there, okay? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about SSH keys here. We are going to, so SSH keys, some people have some experience with it. So SSH keys, if you think about it, all it is SSH key is asymmetric cryptography, but applied to SSH. So you're generating a private and public key pair, and I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people that haven't taken asymmetric yet, asymmetric cryptography. But in asymmetric cryptography, there's two types of keys. Typically, when we think about a key, a password, we generate, you know, one password and we we would share that. The same password or the same key would encrypt and decrypt data, encode and decrypt data, right? That's not the case with asymmetric cryptography. Asymmetric cryptography has something called a private, okay, and a public key. And just as you would think, the private key is supposed to be private for you, okay? No one's supposed to get that private key. If anyone gets that private key, they can intercept your communication, they can log into the server, whatever. So the private key portion is you hold on to. When you generate an RSA key, like we're about to do, that's asymmetric cipher, it also generates a public key portion as well. And so these public and private keys go together. They're like a pair. The public key can do do encryption, and the private key can do decryption or back or forth. Okay, so the thing is, though, to understand is if you encrypt something with your private key, let's say if I created this RSA key pair and it gave me a public and a private key, and I gave everyone in this stream here my public key portion. I gave this to you. You guys have it now, okay? And I said, go ahead with this public key. You can encrypt some data to me. Send it back to me. So everyone would go ahead and encrypt data for me and throw it into the chat or send it to me in Blackboard or whatever, and that would be encrypted with my public key. The only thing that can decrypt that data is the private key portion. No one else that had my public key can decrypt that data. You can't even. Once it's encrypted, you can't decrypt it without the public key portion. And so it's the same thing with the private key. I could actually encrypt data with my private key, give it all to you, but the only thing that can decrypt that data is the other half of the key pair, the public key. So even if I only had my private key, if I encrypted data with my private key, I can't decrypt data with the private key. Believe it or not, you need the other half of the key. So that's how asymmetric cryptography works. There's two, when you create an RSA key pair, it gives you a public and a private key. The private key can encrypt, but it can't decrypt what it encrypted. The public key can also encrypt, but it can't decrypt what it just encrypted. So if you encrypt with the public key, only the private key portion can decrypt that data. If you encrypt with the private key, only the public key portion can decrypt that data. So you need both halves of the key. So I can go ahead and give everyone my public key without worries because I know I'm the only one that holds on to that private key. So without getting too much into the weeds, I hope I've explained it enough that you don't have to completely understand the process for this lab I'm about to show you and what we're about to do. I just want you to understand that you always need to hold on to your private key. Don't let anyone have it. It's on your machine. Protect it with your life. You can give out your public key to everyone in the world and it wouldn't matter, okay? So there's two parts of the key. You have to hold on to that private key. Don't give it out. And the public key can be put on the server with no problems and people could hack it. So people get your public key. It's not going to make a big difference. Okay, so it uses public key cryptography, SSH keys do, and that's what we call this RSA key pair thing. This whole public and private key pair thing, RSA, we refer to public key cryptography. That's what it's called. It's also considered asymmetric cryptography, but it's also considered public key cryptography, so don't let that confuse you. When you generate an SSH key, and we're going to do that with Ssh Shells, it generates a public and a private key pair, and you get them both. The public key, it can be placed on the server. The public key can be placed on Facebook. You can give everyone in the world your public key, it won't matter. Your private key has to be kept secret. As soon as you lose this private key, that whole key pair is compromised, and it's basically like giving everyone your password now, okay? The public key, the key pair that we are going to generate used 2048-bit encryption. That is comparable to a 600 character password. Holy mackerel, 600 characters. I can't make and remember a 600 character password. Can you? No. That's why RSA cryptography and public and private and asymmetric cryptography is very secure. And that's why we want to use it, because it's literally, it would take trillions of years, and actually the stat I heard, I think it was 20 trillion years to crack and brute force this RSA key. Now, I say that with a grain of salt because you know, quantum computing is on the rise, and you know, a whole bunch of things are coming up, and computing is just going to get more and more powerful. Sooner or later, 2048-bit encryption, I would say in 50 years, is going to be crackable. But still, that's 50 years away before we even had that technology to be able to do that. Yes, I know quantum computing really speeds that process up, but a lot of ciphers, and you're going to get into this with your applied cryptography course, are quantum safe, believe it or not. And quantum computing, even the ones that aren't quantum safe, it only knocks it off like half the bits. So you could say, well, 2048-bit encryption is now 1028 with quantum computing. So it really doesn't make it that much easier, but sometimes it halves the security of the key. So you just have to keep that in mind. But for now, for our purposes today, 2048-bit encryption is just fine. You can go ahead and generate 4096 if you want, but it's not really required yet. Okay, there are two ways to generate an SSH key. The first way is to use a program called SSH Keygen, and that's only if you have a like Linux set up. And most people are not running a Linux operating system for their host, so we're not going to worry about that just yet. We will at some point create another server, which we will create an SSH key from that server to upload to another Linux server, but not right now. We're going to talk about that later on in the course. For now, we're going to do it the easy way. And the easy way is by using Xshell or PuTTY on Windows. Now, a little bit of background on that. If you are using PuTTY, if you want to go ahead and use PuTTY, you're not a big Xshell fan, that's fine. PuTTY is free and open software. I love PuTTY. It's just, there's something that, PuTTY is not the greatest software, right? It's good, it does the job, but it's really annoying to use if you have multiple servers and multiple servers to manage. So I use Xshell because we can get a free version. I'm encouraging everyone to use Xshell, and you know, there's other programs out there, but we're going to use Xshell for this course. If you are using PuTTY, I'm not going to show you all of the steps to generate this key using PuTTY. You can go online and try to figure it out. If you don't want to do that, just use Xshell and follow along using that, okay? So we're going to demonstrate using Xshell during this lesson, and SSH Keygen will be demonstrated in a future lesson. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on this next video, I'm going to show you how, and you might want to get Xshell and CentOS ready right now, because you're going to have to do this lab inside of class after this video. I'm going to give you some time to do this lab. So if you want to just watch the lab right now, you can do that. If you want to try to follow along with the video, you can do that as well. This first video, I'm talking a little bit slower and going a little slow. So you can possibly follow along while I'm doing it. The next videos in this course get a little quicker and a little quicker, okay? So what this video is going to show you, it's going to show you how to generate a public and private key pair using Xshell. You're going to copy and install that public key on CentOS 8, and then you're going to log on to the CentOS 8 VM using the public key authentication from Xshell. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, MobaTermX, you can use that as well. All right, here we go.
Okay, now we're going to show you how to generate a public and private key pair.
Testing.
And put that on your CentOS VM, and then log into the CentOS
Testing.
VM using the private and public key pair.
Trying to mute my mic, I'm sorry.
What we call this is public key cryptography. And when you see it in Xshell, you're going to see the option as using a public key. But the first thing we need to do to generate that is we need to go up here into Tools and go down to User Key Manager and click the left button. That will bring up a dialog box showing all the user keys currently created. Now, I have quite a few user keys already created. ignore those. You probably have none. Your box is going to be empty here. So all you need to do is go ahead and click the generate button. And you want to make sure the key type is RSA. I mean, we could do some others, but right now we're just going to stay focused on the RSA algorithm. And the key length can be anywhere from 2048 all the way up to 8192. But let's go ahead and leave it at 2048. 2048 is the minimum bit length that are required these days to be considered secure. A lot of people are moving up to 4096 now, but that's a conversation for another day. We're going to leave it at 2048. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. And now it's generating
you do not, I'm just going to pause the video for a sec while I talk. Hold on 1 second here.
And it's telling me that the public...
a question that came up in the chat. You do not have to perform this now. So you get a lab, you get some lab time after this, I think 15 minutes to do this. And I give you links to be able to do this, and it's all on the weekly learning section. So you have some time after this video to do this. So don't worry, you don't have to follow along right now. Yeah, sorry, the text of the video is a little small. I have a 4K machine, so I realized that after I made these videos that it's a little small, but don't worry, the labs that follow, I actually make the text a little bit bigger. I changed the font size on my my CentOS machine and everything. So, but I will switch my screen to something like 2K or 1028 for the next videos.
Key pair has been created successfully. Click on next and enter a name and passphrase of the new user key. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next, and I can name the key whatever I want here. It's probably a good idea for these purposes just to leave it default ID RSA 2048, because you don't have many keys right now. So just leave it like this. If you can change it if you really want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave mine as default. And the password to encrypt the user key. I'm not going to put a passphrase on this because we don't want to enter a passphrase every time we connect to the machine. We want it to be automatic. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this blank for now, not put anything in there, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. And it says the passphrase is empty. The user key will be saved without encrypting its private key part. Yeah, that's fine for these purposes. Go ahead and click yes. Okay, and so now we have a public key format here that's displayed in front of us. And there's a couple different formats we can choose from here, but we want to make sure the SSH2 open SSH format is there. So we have a couple options here. We can go ahead and copy and paste this right now, which I'm going to do. Copy. But I'm also going to show you another way in case you didn't copy it here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click finish. And now you can see this new key that I've entered here or created is now showing up in this list. If you didn't copy that public key portion in that last dialog box there, you can highlight this and go ahead and click properties, and then click on the public key tab up here, and you can get the public key portion again. So what I want you to do is go ahead and highlight the whole thing, right click, and go to copy, and copy that to your clipboard. And then go ahead and click OK. And close. We don't want anything to do with this right now. It's generated in Xshell, and we're ready to go. Okay, now that we've generated the public key, we're ready to log on to the server. So you can go up here and click on this folder button to open a new folder. I mean, the dialog box to open your server, or you can just, what I like to do is hit Alt-O to open it, and that's automatic. It's just a hotkey that's easier than sliding the mouse over to the folder. You can open this either way, your sessions folder. But anyways, I already have my VM set up in here because in the previous class in the assignment section, I went through the steps and set it up. So I'm ready to connect. I'm just going to go ahead and double click that, and it's going to go ahead and ask me for a username because we're still logging in with a username and password now. We haven't set up SSH keys yet. We're about to. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter. And now it's asking me for a password. I'm just going to go ahead and enter my password, and boom, we are logged in. Now, you can see this text is kind of small, so what I'm going to start doing is customizing this a little bit and making the text a little bigger. I'm going to go to View, and then I'm going to go to, I believe it's under Properties. And if I go down to Terminal, I believe it is. Bear with me. I'm looking for, oh, here we go. Window and font size. I'm going to go ahead and take that font size up to like 16 or something because I'm blind. Yeah, that's better. That makes probably a little easier for you guys to see what I'm doing as well. So now that I have my font size up to 16 and I'm logged into my server, I'm going to type ls, and there's nothing in my home directory where my user resides. That's because I haven't put any files there yet, but that's going to change in a second. And then the way you can tell if you're in your user directory is you can see this little tilde here, this little squiggly line, which is called a tilde. That's your directory you're currently in, and tilde means you're in your user directory. And a way you can really confirm this is typing pwd, which stands for present working directory, and press enter, and you can see you're in /home/ and then your username. My username, since I am Ryan, my present working directory is /home/Ryan, but it's going to be /home/ your username, whatever you created. And as long as you're in that directory, you're in the right spot. If you ever need to get back to your own directory, let's say if you got out of this and you went into the home directory and you're in the different directory and you just want to get back to your own directory, all you do is type cd with nothing after it and press enter, and it brings you back to your home directory. So just make sure you're in your home directory before you start these instructions. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to make a directory, mkdir space dot or period SSH, and press enter. And if we type in ls now for list, we don't see anything yet. Why is that? Well, because the dot means hidden directory. Anytime you have a dot in front of a file name or a dot in front of a directory or anything, it means it's hidden from the ls command. But we can resolve that by typing ls space -a, and we can see the hidden directories and files inside of our home directory. So there were some files already here, it seems. We just didn't see them. And the directories are blue in our default configuration here. So this is the only directory in here. I can go ahead and type ls space -al for a long listing of a directory, and it's going to show me a little more information about these files. So you can see this right here, this D means it's a directory, and it's also blue. All these other ones are just random files, which we're going to talk about later on in this course, some of them at least, but we're just going to ignore those for now. So anyways, I made an SSH directory, and here are the permissions on this s.ssh directory. These permissions are wrong, and we need to set some correct permissions on this for our SSH keys to work. So we are going to type in chmod space, and then we're going to type in the permissions for this directory. And the permissions I want on this specific directory, I want read, write, and execute for the user only. And that means it's an octal value of 700, and we're going to go through the security settings later in this course, but for now, just trust me, chmod space 700, and then the directory we just created, and press enter. So now if we type ls space -all files and long format, we can see that the permissions have now changed. And so if you don't understand what these permissions all mean, don't worry. In a future class, we're going to go through this, okay? But just for now, just trust me, these are the permissions you want. It should say drwx and then have a bunch of dashes after it, okay? So that basically just the user yourself can only read, write, and change into this directory. So now with those permissions correct, I'm going to go ahead and cd to SSH into the directory. So now if I type present working directory, I can see I'm in home, Ryan, and then that hidden SSH directory that I'm in now, and there's nothing in here. Nothing, no hidden files either. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to create a file named Authorized Keys. And there's a few ways we can do this. If you installed using the instructions that I gave you using installing CentOS 8 using a minimal install, there's only one text editor installed right now, and that is Vi. Now, Vi is a little cumbersome for new users to Linux to use. So if you're not comfortable with using Vi or Vim, I suggest you install something called Nano, and we're going to do that really quickly. So I want you to go ahead. We got to change to the root user to do this. And sudo isn't set up yet. So we're going to use that command that I told you not to use very much. But since we don't have this set up correctly to use sudo, we have to use su. Type in su, and it's going to ask you for the root password. Type in the root password, and it's going to change you to root temporarily while we install Nano. And I'm going to go ahead and type dnf space install Nano and press enter. And it says, okay, well, we want to install Nano, one package. This all looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and click yes, and it's going to go ahead and install Nano. That's a Nano text editor, which is very easy to use for you instead of Vi. Now, very important, you don't want to miss this step. You got to change back to the normal user of Ryan or whatever your user is. So to get out of this SU, and now, see how your root here, we want to change back to Ryan. Or your username, and to get out of this root SU, you type exit, and then exits out of that SU shell, and you're no longer root, and you become your username again. Now that you're normal, you're the normal user again. Just make sure that you're still in that directory, okay? And when we're in there, now we can use the program called Nano. And again, if you want to use Vi, all the power to you. I use Vi and Vim all the time. It's just confusing for students. So we're going to use Nano, which is a lightweight text editor. Nano space, and we're going to create a new file called Authorized Keys, and press enter. And so this looks, there's a whole bunch of stuff down here, and you can type whatever you want in here. No worries, right? That's like a normal text editor, but not as nice as you would expect in Windows or something. This is all ANSI. That's what we call these characters. But it's a job done, and it's really easy to use. Okay, now that we're in the Nano program, I want you to go up to Edit here and put Paste, and that will paste the SSH key into Nano. Now, this doesn't look like that whole SSH key, but what's happened is it's actually it's all on one line. So if I use the arrow keys, I can scroll all the way back and see that whole SSH key. It didn't put it on multiple lines. So if you keep going back, the start should say SSH-RSA, like that. And if I press the end key, I can get back to the end. If I press the home key, I can get back to the home, right? It's just like a normal text editor you'd expect. But anyways, if you have that long line like that, that's what you want. Now what we need to do is we need to go ahead, and we have two options. We can either write out, which is save, so that's Control-O, or we can just exit, and it'll ask us if we'd like to save it. So I'm just going to go Control-X for exit. And it says save modified buffer, answering no, we'll discard changes. Of course I want to. So I pressed Y for yes, and it says, what file name would you like to write? I'm just going to go ahead. It's already got their authorized keys because I put it in at the command line. I'm just going to press enter, and it takes me back to the shell. Now, I'm going to type ls to see if authorized keys is there. Okay, it is. The file's there, but it's not giving me any permissions to look at on this file. So what's that one command that we have to type? We have to type ls space -al from list all files and long format. Okay, it's very important that we set up these authorized keys properly. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure that these permissions are set up correctly. Right now, if I'm looking at this, the permissions mean that I can read and write this file, My group can read and write this file, but my group is Ryan and I'm the only one in that group, so that doesn't matter. But here's the real problem, is that other people on the system can also read this file. And that's a security risk in CentOS and RHEL. So we need to make sure that we set the proper permissions on this file so that CentOS or RHEL will be happy and allow us to use these public keys. So it's very important that you set this up correctly. If you don't, it's not going to work. So pay attention. We need to go chmod space, and then we need to set the octal for read and write. So this is 1. So this is execute right here. So that octal, that's 1, that's 2, and that's 4. So, and we just want this one, so that's 6 there. And we want 0 and 0 for these parts. So 600 we want to set on these authorized keys. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And ls space -al shows me that I have read and write only for myself on authorized keys now. And that's the correct permissions we want. With that all set up, we should be able to log in using these keys now, using Xshell. So without terminating this one session, I'm going to open up another session by hitting Alt-O. But this time, instead of just double-clicking here, I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to go up to Authentication, and I'm going to take this and go down to Public Key now, and put my username as Ryan in there. But you notice how password is grayed out now. With public keys, we don't need to use a password. All we have to do is choose that key that we set up. And remember, I have a ton of keys here. You're not going to have all these keys, but just choose your one key in the list and make sure that you got it set there. And the passphrase, we didn't put a passphrase in for that private key, so you don't have to put one in here. That's okay. Just go ahead and press OK. And so now this session should be set up to log in using a public key instead of your password. So if I just double click this, it created a second session, and you notice how it didn't even ask me for my password there? Boom, I'm in with a public key. That is a lot more secure than using a password. People forget passwords. People write passwords down on sticky notes, you know. Using public and private key pairs, you are so much more secure on these Linux systems, and that's how we want to set up most logins for anywhere that you want to log into a Linux system, if possible. So that's it, and I hope you learned something in this session.
Okay, so that was a rather long and slow video, and they get a lot quicker. I talk a lot quicker later on in the course. I just want to make sure that we get the fundamentals down, because this is where I lose a lot of the people that don't have a lot of experience with Linux, but we get, you know, 5-10 times quicker. Okay, so we start to go really quick to the point where even the experienced Linux guys will have a hard time keeping up. So a question, so sorry if I pronounce this name wrong. I'm probably going to butcher it. Sahaj, what do you, 3:30 a.m.? Where are you actually? If you're trying to listen at 3:30 a.m., honestly, I would probably just watch the recording of this class. That's really really early or really late, depending if you stayed up or if you got up really early. But fantastic that you're actually up watching this. Okay, so that's how we do the SSH key generation, and then we generate the public and private key pair in Xshell. We took the public key portion and we put that on the Linux operating system in that SSH directory in Authorized Keys. And I went very slowly on that because it's extremely important. Let me just get my clicker here. It's extremely important that you guys get the correct permissions on that file in the directory set. If they're not set correctly, when you try to connect in, it's just going to say authentication failure. And you would have to go in the Linux logs and the secure logs to see why it's failing and whatnot. And I didn't want to have to get into that right just yet. So I wanted to go really slow to make sure people didn't mess that one up. Yeah, a lot of yeah, you guys in India, that's so awesome. So yeah, I have in my team, a lot of my team members are actually in India, uh, and we have lots of meetings. I used to have a meeting at like 8 o'clock in the morning with them, and this gentleman and all his team, they get on at 8 o'clock my time, and I think it's like supper time for them or something like that. And I'm like, is this too late for you guys? And they're so good about it. Like, no, 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 this is fine. Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate you meeting. Very professional guys. I really respect your work ethic over there to be able to work in our time zone. And sometimes I have to stay up late at night to be in like a time zone in China or India as well. And I know it's rough. I'm there at like 2 o'clock in the morning going, wow, I'm tired. Like, so I get it. No, this is a lot of respect to you guys. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Hopefully, I'm not going too fast. In the chat section, you guys, was that a good speed to introduce you to some of the basic concepts in Linux, or a little quicker? You want me to go a little slower, or was that a good speed? Just want to get an idea. I don't want to go ever too quick. I know some of you guys, obviously, Chris, you always have some really good experience with Linux, and we will get to the point where, Chris, you're having a problem keeping up too. But at the start, I want to, exponentially just go a little quicker and a little quicker. But at the start, I just do. That's what I hate. When I went to college, some professors would go so quick. The first couple of classes, I was lost, and I said, "Forget this." But we get everyone at a basic level, and then you ramp you up real quick. All good. Pace is okay. Okay. I didn't want to think I was going too slow or too fast. You got to let me know. Okay, on to the next stuff here. Let me go ahead and get my clicker, and we will move on. Um, so that's we got to do this lab. If you didn't follow along, I want you to go ahead and do this lab. Now, the the information is on Blackboard. I have a PDF that shows you step by step how to do this. And I also have that video linked as well. And so what I want everyone to do, if you didn't follow along there, I want you to go ahead and do the lab now. It's very important that we continue to practice our skills and not just have like a big lab at the end of the semester, or a final project, or me give you an assignment that encompasses all the 2 weeks. I want you to be doing these things, and if you have problems, tell me in class that you're having problems. And so, we can address those issues. If you've already done this by following along, go ahead, pat yourself on the back. We're going to reconvene in 20 minutes, but we can take this, you guys can take this as a break. It's already been an hour anyways. So we're going to get back together at about 6:30 or so. So if you haven't done the lab, go ahead and try to do it. If you have, sit back, go get a coffee, go eat dinner, and I'll see you back here at 6:30, okay? You don't need VMware tools on the VM just yet, Chris. You can just go up to Edit and then Paste. If you're on VMware, like you can't just right-click. It shows you in the video. You can't just right-click in the console. You have to go up to Edit, and then you can paste. Yeah, my what I would do is make sure that you already have an Xshell open with your password authentication. So um, what I did was just do password authentication, open up one shell with password authentication to CentOS, and that means you're already logged in through using Xshell. And Xshell allows you to copy and paste very easily. And while that shell is open, you can go ahead and set up the SSH keys for in there, and then you can open up another shell. You can have two windows open, and one was password authentication. The other one could be using SSH key authentication. So that's how I did it. That's just easier. But Chris is right. You do need VMware tools installed on the VM to properly to properly use it with inside the console. We will get to that point. I just didn't want to do that right now and confuse everyone. There's so many other little things that we need to go over, but good call, Chris. Okay, we're going to get started again soon. So hopefully a lot of you have been through the content and we're able to get the SSH key working. If for some reason you can't get the SSH key working, then please go ahead and get a Teams chat with me later on after the class, or send me an email or something like that, and I'll be glad to help you out with it. It's critical that we get that working for the rest of the class. Okay, we're going to start moving on here. And if you haven't got it done yet, don't worry about it. You can continue that. It doesn't have to be done in class. I just like to give you some time to make sure that you do it, and we're keeping up. Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss the differences between password and versus SSH keys. SSH keys are much more secure, as we've been talking about. The SSH key can be 2048-bit RSA key is equivalent to a 600 plus character password. And here's the important part that a lot of you will have to understand is that SSH, some companies will only allow SSH keys to be used inside their organization. Many companies will not allow you to use a password inside their organization to connect to their Linux machines. For example, does anyone in the chat have any of this experience? And just let me know if you have any AWS experience. Have you connected to Linux and created Linux machines in AWS? Let me know in chat, yes, no? If you ever use AWS, you have to connect to it using a key pair, an SSH key pair. And so any servers that you connect into AWS and create in your EC2 servers that you would create inside your VPC require you to set up a key pair to access them. Now, there's a few other different ways that you can access them. You can access them through a session shell now, through different ways that AWS allows you to access that server. But if you actually want to access it through Xshell or PuTTY or whatever, or even the command line in Linux using SSH, you have to use a public and private key pair. It won't let you use passwords. And if you ever lose that private key, you're SOL. That just means you're out of luck. We have a course for cloud security in this semester. Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. I wasn't sure if it was next semester or whatever. So with AWS, you're going to use these public and private SSH keys quite a bit. So it's very important to get used to them and start using them when you can. So SSH keys generally are easier to use once they're set up. There's no more password that you have to remember. All you have to do is make sure that public key, that private key portion is available inside Xshell or PuTTY, or even in your command shell, like as a file or something, like as a PEM file. If you have that available, you can always just connect to that server where you have put the public key portion and not even provide a password, and it just logs you in just like that. It's like magic. Use SSH keys when and where possible. So get in the habit of using them. Try to get away from passwords. Okay, so that's it for SSH. We will be using SSH keys and SSH throughout this course, so I really wanted to spend a lot of time on that to make sure we are all up to date and on the same level there. And so people who have used it before, I'm sorry, I know it's a little slow, but now we're going to get into DNF and we're going to start talking about package managers for Linux. And I'm just going to start going just a little bit quicker here, okay? DNF, what is it? It means dandified yum. So what is yum? Yum is the equivalent of apt, APT, on Debian or Ubuntu or Kali or whatever you might have used before. If you have used CentOS 7 or RHEL 7 or any versions of CentOS or Fedora or whatever before the last couple of years, then you're probably very familiar with the yum command. And so that's what DNF used to be called before it became DNF. And you can still type in yum instead of DNF inside the console, and it will work. So sometimes, like, I'm old school, right? I still remember yum, and typing DNF. Sometimes I just by memory type yum instead on CentOS 8, and it still works. It's the same command. And there's backwards compatibility and usage compatibility between DNF and yum. So typically the commands that worked on yum will also work on DNF. And so it's interchangeable. It is the premier and primary update and security errata management tool for CentOS and RHEL. DNF is equivalent to app on Debian. We've already talked about that. So apt-get, app, all those commands that use apt, DNF is the command on CentOS. It uses something called RPMs, and RPM stands for Red Hat Package Manager. Instead of DEB, which is a Debian type update package, and that's what you would use on Ubuntu and whatnot. It includes security-related features to manage security errata, and the basic common commands are the following. DNF install to install a package. DNF search to search for a package. So you can type DNF search SSH, and it will return all the packages that have SSH in its name. You can type DNF downgrade to a previous package. Let's say if for some reason you upgraded and it broke something, and it happens all the time with Java. I've had to downgrade Java versions all the time. So you could use a DNF downgrade, and it will go to the previous version that's available in the repos. And repos are just a repository where all the packages, all the updates are kept on CentOS servers or RHEL servers or whatnot. And so it goes into that repo and it checks to see if there's a version before the one you have installed. And if there is, it will downgrade that version automatically. And we're going to get some experience with that. We can also do DNF upgrade, which is obviously the opposite of downgrade. And you can do DNF upgrade and press enter, and it will upgrade every package that needs upgrading on your server. Or you can do DNF upgrade and then specify a package like OpenSSH or whatever to upgrade just one package. So there's a lot of flexibility with the DNF command, and we're going to go through a couple of those examples. So you're going to get some experience with that. Dnf History, that's a subcommand inside DNF that provides history on the commands that you have run in the past. And it is very powerful because, I'm covering the history port. Let me go over to these books over here and down here. There we go, DNF History, okay? And so it maintains a history of package transactions, which you could upgrades, downgrades, removals, or installations of packages. We're going to show some examples of that. So DNF history, if you just type that in on CentOS, if you have CentOS open right now, you can type in DNF space history, and it will show you a transactional list. Now, you might not have anything in there yet. We're going to create some history in a second. So if you don't have anything in there yet, don't worry about it. When you do have a history list, you can type DNF history info and then the number of the transaction that you'll see in the list, and it will give you some details on that transaction. It allows you to drill into that actual transaction and show you what the package manager DNF did. What did it do? Install packages, delete packages, update packages, remove packages. We'll see all that. I like to call this next little command called rollback. I like to call it a save game feature because I'm a gamer. I think of games. I relate everything to games. And so, if you're in Zelda or something like that and you're coming up to this boss, right? And you're like, I don't know, this might not work, right? So what do? You save the game, right? And you save the game and then you go to the boss and it's an epic fight. You fight for 5 minutes, this and that, and then what happens? You died. More like Dark Souls. If you guys are Dark Souls players, you died right across the screen. That's typically what it is. And then you're hoping, oh man, did I save that game, right? I need to go back because I really messed up. And that's what this rollback feature with DNF is kind of like. You can think of, when we look at this, when you type in DNF history, you're going to see a bunch of transactions. And I think about that as saved games, points where you've saved the game. And if for some reason you have made a few, you've installed some packages or removed some packages and really messed things up on the server, you can use Dnf History rollback and specify the transaction number, and it will roll back all those changes you made, install, remove packages, do this, do that, and get you back to, like, you know, maybe yesterday when things worked. So this rollback feature is really helpful, and we're going to demonstrate that as well. If you clear a command, it won't show. Is there any difference if we use yum or root to install package? DNF, same behavior, yum, wrt. So yeah, you're going to have to use root to install the package and remove packages. So I'm going to show you that in this next demonstration, because if you try to use a normal user, a lot of things are going to fail. In fact, it's actually going to complain. Here's the thing though, with yum, you can actually type it in and then it'll say, hey, escalation required, and it will ask you for the root password. And it will allow you to install that way, but we typically want to be using sudo or su to get into the root before we start messing with yum or DNF. And yum and DNF, again, you'll hear me use those interchangeably. Both commands do the same thing, but it really is yum defaults to DNF, like it just points to it. So if I say yum by mistake, that's just my old school mentality coming back. Just like people keep trying to use netstat instead of SS. I always say yum because I use it every day in the corporation. We have a ton of CentOS, a ton of RHEL 7 servers, and not so many RHEL 8 servers yet, but we're getting there. We're starting to make the changeover. And on RHEL 7, we still use yum. On RHEL 8, it's all DNF. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you where my clicker's not working. What's going on? Why is my clicker not working? Hold on a second. Okay, so this next demonstration here is going to show you an example package. We're going to install packages using the DNF command. We're going to remove packages using the DNF command. We're going to use DNF history subcommand, and we're going to use that cool thing, DNF rollbacks. And if you want, there's going to be a lab after this, just like the last one. We're going to give you like 20 minutes or 15 minutes to do it. If you want, you can follow along with this demonstration now. I go a little bit quicker, but still enough that you can still follow along. Or you can wait till this demonstration is done and then do the lab, and we'll give you some time after that, okay? So it's up to you. And if you do this demonstration, when we actually take the time for the rest of the class to do it, you guys can just take a break, okay? And here we go.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate the DNF history command now, and a few other commands with DNF that are very useful. So the first thing I'm going to do is get into my Linux VM here and type DNF history and press enter. And you can see that there is only one line here, one transactional ID in the history, and that's reinstall DNF, because I had to reinstall the DNF program to clear my previous history for this lab. And so we're going to go ahead and generate some history in DNF and show you how the history command works. So the first thing I'm going to do is type DNF, and then I'm going to try to install Vim. But look what's going to happen. Uh-oh. The command needs to be run with super root user privileges. And most of the time we would type sudo DNF install Vim, but we can't do that right now because our user is not set up to sudo on this VM just yet. So I'm going to make you do something that I've told you not to do, but we're going to do it for this purposes. We're going to type su and press enter, and you're going to have to type in the root password here, and then you'll be logged in as the root user instead of your normal user, and this will give us super user privileges for this demonstration. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to type DNF install Vim and press enter. And look at that, it allows me to install it now. And so Vim is just a text editor, so you don't have to worry about that. We're not really worried about Vim at this point. I'm just showing you how to use DNF and look at the transactional history. So we're going to go ahead and install that. Okay, well, Vim is installed, and I'm going to go now, I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to type DNF history to have a look at my transactional history now. Look at that. it went and installed Vim and it recorded that history up here. So I can go a step further. I can drill down on that transactional ID on the history and have a look. So Dnf History info. So that's another subcommand that you have to type in after history and press type 2 and press enter. And now we can see this transactional ID 2 happened on this date, on this time, from the user Ryan. And here's the command line I used, install Vim, and this is the exact what Dnf did to install this package. We can also roll back this transaction. But what I'm going to do before I do that, I'm going to log a few more transactions in here to show you what else I can do. And then we're going to roll them all back at one time, okay? So I'm going to remove the Nano package that we created, or that we installed last lab. So I'm going to go ahead and DNF, remove, and by the way, it's not DNF uninstall like you would normally think, because you use install to install packages. You actually have to use DNF remove to remove a package. So I'm going to go ahead and DNF remove Nano, and that's going to remove the Nano package that we installed last lab. So I'm going to go OK, and I'm just going to clear the screen, DNF history, and have a look at that. So I've installed Vim. And this third transaction now is removing Nano, and I can drill down on that Dnf History 3 to have a look at what happened, and you can see the package is altered, remove the Nano package. Okay, so I just cleared my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and look at the Dnf history of all the things I've done now. I've installed Vim, and I've removed Nano. And I'm going to do just a few more things here before I go ahead and roll back my changes to the save game, or load my changes, as you would say in a game. Let's see here. I'm going to look for another package that's installed. So I'm going to use this one command called rpm q-qa, and that's going to show me some of the packages that are installed here. And I just want to see the first 10. So I'm going to pipe this to a command called head and then -10, and that will show me the first 10 packages in this list that are installed. So I see ncurses base here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove ncurses. So I'm just going to copy that and go ahead and do a DNF remove, and then ncurses base. Okay, well, you can see here what's happened. I can't remove ncurses base because that would mess with DNF. So DNF is a protected package as well. It won't let me mess with anything that depends on DNF, or sorry, DNF depends on. It won't let me remove any of those packages. So I can't remove that one. Let's see, there's another thing that I should be able to remove. Let's see here. SBC. I'm just going to go ahead and type that in. DNF remove SBC. Okay, so it's going to remove SBC, but it's also telling me that there's a Firefox and Pipewire dependent packages that are also going to be removed when I remove this. So do I want to go ahead and remove all 4 packages, the SBC and the packages that depend on this? Yes, this is okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen again and type DNF history. And now I see that I've installed Vim, removed Nano, and removed SBC. But look at this. It says that SBC affected 4 packages. So remember, I could drill down. If I was a admin who came on the server and wanted to see what happened on the server, I could drill down to that by doing DNF history info 4. And I can see that when I removed SBC here, it went ahead and removed all these dependencies as well. So that's not good. So let's pretend that I've been a junior admin the whole time and I messed the server up. I didn't know what I was doing. And then the supervisor called in a senior administrator, you, to come in, roll back or put this server back in the current state that it was before the junior admin installed Vim, removed Nano, and removed SBC. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen here and type DNF history. Now pretend you're the senior admin coming on here looking at this and going, well, there's been a few things that have happened. So I want to go ahead and roll back to this transaction ID before any of these things happened. So I can go ahead and type DNF history, roll back, and then I want to roll back to transactional ID 1 and press enter. And look at everything it's going to do here. This is exactly what I expected. It wants to go ahead and install Nano because we removed it. It wants to install SBC because we removed that too. It's also going to install the dependencies, Firefox, Pipewire, and Pipewire libs that SBC also removed because remember we affected 4 packages up here. And then it's going to remove Vim because we installed Vim, and it's going to remove the dependent packages that Vim required to get installed as well. See, Vim was one package, and there was 3 other dependencies that Vim installed. And so it's going to remove those 3 as well. So it's going to do all these cool things just with this one, I like to call load game command, because you're loading your saved game from back here, and it's going to remove everything you did here. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. Yes, this is what I want to do. And look at that. There it goes. And it looks like it's going to take a little bit to install Firefox here. That's okay. We'll just wait for it. I'll speed up the recording. Okay, and it's finally done. So what it did was it went ahead and downloaded all the packages and then did all these things that it was said it was going to do. It was install Nano, install SBC, install these dependencies, remove Vim, and remove these dependencies. Okay, I'm going to clear my screen. I'm going to go just Dnf History again, and you can see I have Dnf. I have the transactional ID 5, which is the history rollback 1, and that rolled it all the way back to transactional ID 1. I can go ahead and type Dnf History info 5 to have a look exactly what happened here in the transactional ID 5, and you can see it installed and removed the correct packages that we wanted. I'm going to go ahead, it's a little step further, and type Dnf info, and I'm going to type make sure that Nano package is installed, and there it is. And I can go ahead and Dnf info and make sure SBC is installed. And there it is as well, SBC. This is the architecture we're worried about here. We're not worried about the 686 architecture. And that's installed as well. Remember, we had removed it previously. Let's go ahead and see what else also we did there. Dnf History and Dnf History Info 5. And we also removed Vim. And we installed Pipewire again. So let's go, and Firefox. Let's go ahead and check Firefox. Dnf Info, Firefox. And there it is. And Firefox has been installed. We can also say DNF install Vim to see if we can reinstall Vim. And we can. There it is, Vim enhanced. We don't want to do it. But if we wanted to, we could reinstall Vim. But, you know, that's just showing you that it hasn't been installed. If we type DNF info Vim enhanced, we should get some information on there, and it says available packages. It doesn't say installed packages like the other one. So Vim Enhanced has also been removed. Okay, that's a little bit of rundown of the DNF history command. Hope that helped, and let's get on with the course.
Okay, there we go. And so hopefully that worked for you guys. I just realized something. Was everyone able to remove the SBC package? I'm not sure if I installed that specifically in my testing, and I don't know if you guys have SBC installed. I'm hoping you do. But if not, don't worry about it. The idea was to, you know, by installing Vim and removing Nano, that would have created enough history in the transaction to just show you how the rollback works, right? I'm just trying to create some history here. But let me go ahead and read the chat here. Do we need any way to add any SS like Lab 1? I'm not quite sure what you mean. SS was just looking at the ports in Lab 1. We didn't have to do that for the DNF command. Stephen Davies, any reason we would want to remove history item from DNF? No. If you do that, then that's a security issue. Because if there was if I was called into a server and I was going to do forensics on a server, and then all of a sudden realized that someone has removed the history for DNF on a server, the first thing I would be doing, no SBC? Okay, don't worry. That's okay. It's probably because I installed Firefox as I was trying a few things, but that's okay. SBC isn't the main issue here. You just, as long as you installed Vim and removed Nano, you created a little bit of a history, roll back, and you'll see it roll back to that previous state. Okay, so I'm just gonna, yeah. So Stephen, so if there was a, if I went on, if I was called on to do some forensics on a server and I came on there and I noticed that DNF history was gone, the first thing I'd be doing is asking the backup team to restore the server from a previous day or month to figure out what the DNF history looked like, and then start trying to figure out who deleted it and when they did it. So and then I'd be talking to this the security ops team to make sure to see what kind of logs, who deleted it. We log essentially all the commands that are in corporations, and they would have that logs sent off to somewhere third party, so we'd be able to see who tried to delete it. So yeah, there's no reason you should be removing history items in DNF. The only reason I did that is because I was playing around with it for the lab, and then I wanted a clean slate. So what I did was just deleted the SQLite history, the database, and then reinstalled DNF, and it recreated the database for me. So that's why how I deleted mine. Okay, so go ahead and do the lab if you haven't done it. Install the Vim package. Okay, so here's the thing. So if you guys don't have the SBC package, don't worry about that. What you can do, just don't even worry about it. All I want you to do is install the Vim package, install the postfix package, remove the Nano package, and then don't worry about removing the SBC package if you didn't have it, okay? Don't worry about that. And then what I want you to do is roll back changes after you've installed the Vim package, installed the postfix package, and removed the Nano package. Roll back changes so that all the changes are rolled back except the installation of the Vim package. I want you to keep the Vim package installed on the server. So if you think about that, you're going to want to roll back to the transaction of the Vim package, but you don't want to go past that. Okay, so take a second, try to do that lab, try to figure out, how this is all going to work. What I'm gonna do is, you can go ahead and watch the video that I just posted on YouTube. Here's the link, and that should also be in Blackboard. I wish I should have put some commands up here like DNF install, DNF rollback, all those commands up here. I'm going to go back for a second and show you those commands again, and here they are. If you guys want to take a screenshot of that right now, that might help you with your lab. I'll give you about a minute. Take a screenshot if you can, or copy these commands down. And then I'm going to go back to the lab thing to show you the tasks that need to be done. So these are the commands you're going to have to use. The history command, the history info, the history rollback. And there's one more slide I'm going to show you that's going to have some more of the commands. And I'll go to that slide in a minute. Just give you a second to copy these ones down. Okay, so hopefully you guys got those copied down. If not, just ask me in chat. And here are the other commands that you're going to need to know, that you're going to need to use. Is it going? No, it's going forward. I want to go backwards. Here are the other commands: DNF install, DNF downgrade, DNF upgrade, all those things. You won't need upgrade, but you're going to need DNF install. Also, what's not listed here is DNF remove. Remember that command? And DNF install, DNF remove are the ones that you're going to be using for the lab. So just write DNF install and DNF remove down, because those are the ones you're gonna be using. And I'm just gonna go ahead and skip back to here. And remember, you just want to do this one, this one, this one. Don't do the remove SBC package if you don't have it. And after you've done those things, roll back so that Vim stays installed on your computer, but you remove the you remove the postfix package and you reinstall the Nano package with the rollback. Okay. So go ahead, take 10 minutes to go ahead and do this. Yeah, Lily, the storm is rolling over. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. The storm is rolling over our area too. I've heard that, there could be tornadoes, all that good jazz. So, hey, if I lose connection as well, I'm sorry. We can't do anything about the power station. But if that's the case, I will record, depending on how long the power goes out, I will record the session and put the rest on Blackboard and YouTube. So don't worry about that. So anyways, this lab is not marked. This is just for your purposes. So if you mess up, don't worry. I just want you to get some usage with the DNF command and the rollback. There'll be an assignment that will have specific requirements for you to do, but this isn't it. So don't worry about that. So we're going to reconvene in about 10 minutes, about 7:10 or so. And then there's only one more section and one more lab after this, and it's a really cool one. You're going to like that. So see you back at around 7:10, and then we'll finish it. We'll finish this presentation up with the last lab, okay? Okay, it's almost time to start back up. I don't want to keep you guys too long today, so hopefully everyone got a chance to mess with the rollback feature and whatnot, and you start to see how powerful that feature is. And I know I've taken a lot of time on a package manager. Most people don't take that long on a package manager, but you got to understand how critical it is to security to be able to manage these packages. It's very, very important. In fact, I would say almost 60% of my job in operations is managing packages using Yum, DNF, Red Hat Satellite Server, in some cases using these things that I'm just about to teach you right now, cron jobs, Cockpit, DNF Automatic. We don't use these methods as much in a data center because we use Red Hat Satellite Server to manage and Ansible to manage a lot of our patches, because when you're patching 2,000, 3,000 servers, it has to be more of a centralized server patching rather than going into each one of these and setting and making sure that each one of these are automatically updating and staying automatically updated. We need a centralized server to manage that many servers. So when do we upgrade, and how do we upgrade packages on RHEL or on CentOS, or really any sort of Linux machine or Windows machine, right? You have to do updates on a monthly or weekly or even daily basis. Most data centers will update monthly or weekly. They typically review the patches before it goes out to 2,000 servers. So you'll have a testing team and a QA team which will get the patches for that month, and they get a week to test and whatnot. And then if their tests come back clean, they have thousands of tests. Then they post something, a PDF, to the rest of the corporation saying, you guys are good to go to install these patches this month. And that's how data centers usually do it. There's a team that reviews the new patches as they come in from Red Hat to make sure they're not going to break anything in our environment. And typically for Linux machines, they'll use Red Hat Satellite Server or other centralized corporate patch management tools. Some companies use Spacewalk, and that's just the upstream for Red Hat Satellite Server, but not a lot of larger companies will. They'll use Satellite Server instead. Smaller corporations and standalone servers will opt to keep their servers patched automatically using command line tools or Cockpit. Like if you only have 2 or 3 servers, you're not going to have a satellite server to manage that. And most companies will have 1 or 2. Small businesses to even medium-sized business might only have 10 Linux servers, or even 5 Linux servers, and one might be a web server, and one might be some AWS servers and whatnot. And so they typically keep those updated using command line tools instead of like a centralized server. What are some command line tools that can keep packages updated automatically? Well, there are a few. For CentOS and for RHEL 7, we can use something called Dnf-Automatic. And that is, it's a most preferred way of doing things for standalone because it's literally really lightweight and small. However, we can use cron jobs as well. But that's the least preferred. Cron job. So cron, C-R-O-N, is like a Linux scheduler. And you can schedule certain things to happen on certain days of the week and times or whatever, or reoccurring every month or day or month of the time of the month or whatever using cron. And we're not going to get into cron too much in this course. It kind of goes outside of the scope. We just mention it. But that's what cron is. It's like a Windows scheduler or a scheduler, and you can run a certain script or a command at a certain time. So we can run Dnf Upgrade every month. We're using cron jobs. Now, the only problem with that is there's not a lot of logging and reporting based on that, and it's kind of cumbersome to control, and a lot of people don't look for the upgrades to happen there. So I would stay away from cron jobs if you can, but it works. And like if you wanted to use cron jobs to run things update things on a monthly basis, it fully works. And I'm not going to teach that. What I am going to teach is the Dnf Automatic package, and I'm going to teach, you're going to like this one, Cockpit. And it's the alternative to a command line. It actually shows us a GUI interface through a web browser on how we can manage a Linux server, specifically RHEL 8 or CentOS 8 or 9 servers. Really neat. And that is an acceptable method to manage and do updates and whatnot, even though that it's not a command line tool. RHEL provides this, Red Hat provides this in RHEL and CentOS, and it's an accepted way to manage a single server. I'm going to quickly talk about DNF Automatic. You're not going to have a lab on this. I just wanted to mention that this is a possibility because we're going to lean more towards Cockpit instead because a lot of you guys are new to Linux, and it just gets things done a lot quicker, and it makes sense to a lot more students. DNF Automatic is an RPM package that you can install by going dnf install dnf-automatic. And remember, you don't have to do this, so don't worry. Unless you see an assignment, then you have to do it. But for now, this lab, we're not doing this. Once it's installed, you modify the configuration in this file right here. This file is created automatically for you, etc/dnf/automatic.conf. And by the way, that /etc directory, okay, or some people call it etc, that's where all the configuration files for the server are. So anytime you see /etc, it's typically where the configuration files for a Linux operating system are going to live. And then after you modify the template in this file, you can go ahead and enable it and start it up automatically. And this starts a timer in something called systemd. We're going to talk a little bit about systemd a little more in this, a little later on in this course. If you're familiar with older versions of Linux or some versions of Ubuntu, like Debian and stuff, you still might be using the Init Scripts, which uses that, instead of systemctl to control things and services, use something called this, service. And you go service, and then you put the like SSHD and then stop or start. But in RHEL, we use something called systemd in RHEL 7, 8, and CentOS 8, 7, 8, and 9. And so service this is the old way of doing things, and some distros still use service, and it's actually just scripts. The new stuff is systemd or systemctl. Okay, this is the new. And this is referred to as the systemd method. Okay, so anytime you hear systemd, they're using systemctl to control the services, and you've seen me use this quite a few times in this class already. So if you're familiar with service, systemctl is just a new way of doing things, okay? So you can still use the service, I believe on CentOS 8, you can still type in service and it will redirect you to systemctl, but systemctl is the way you should be controlling services. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing that systemctl can actually create these things called timers. And so when you install this DNF Automatic, you can tell in this configuration file when you want these automatic installations and what type of installation, what type of packages you want installed, and how you want the administrator to be notified when these installations are happening or these updates are happening. So this can automatically notify you via email or systemmtod or anything like that. And so and then it works on a timer, and inside here you tell it when you want this to update, and that timer will just start running. And once you actually have this installed and enabled, to list the timers on your system, you can do a systemctl space list-timers star.dnf-star, and that will list all the timers for your DNF automatic stuff, and it'll tell you when the next time it's going to try to update. And so by default, this is going to try to update at 6 a.m. every morning. So if you did this right now, your timer would say it's going to update. It's going to say it's 11 hours away. That's what it's going to show here. But again, I'm not going to show you or demo this method to you because I just wanted to talk about it just in case that, you didn't want to use Cockpit, or maybe there's a corporation, you get hired in a corporation and they don't want you to use Cockpit because they say it's extra memory, extra RAM usage, and there's 20 servers and we don't want to use Cockpit on each one of them. This is another way you could do it. Okay, moving on. Here is what I told you guys would really like. Cockpit. It's really awesome, and I'm really happy that RHEL made this because it's a real easy way for new people to Linux, or even experienced Linux admins, to really get to first of all, to manage the server remotely using your web browser like Firefox or Chrome or whatever. But also give you a good graphical representation of what's going on in the server. And you don't have to remember all these commands like top and ps and all these other commands that we're going to talk about in this course to do some system diagnostics. Now, yes, the cockpit doesn't get really advanced with a lot of stuff. It shows you very basic information, enough information so that you can say if the server is healthy or not healthy. And if you really needed to, you would probably still have to SSH in that server and really start to drill down into the different commands. But Cockpit will allow you to get a good idea of what's going on and actually control system updates, look at log files and a whole bunch of great stuff without even SSHing into the server. It's a web-based graphical interface, like I said. You can go to the cockpit-project.org and poke around on there and get a little more information on Cockpit. It's an easy to manage CentOS and RHEL. It's easy to manage CentOS and RHEL servers using it, and it's very user-friendly, as we're going to see in a second. Installing Cockpit is extremely easy, and I really got to give it to RHEL for the Red Hat for the effort they put in to make this very user-friendly. And actually, it's really good on resources as well. All you have to do is type dnf space install cockpit and then systemctl start cockpit. And then if you want to check the status to make sure it's running, you just go systemctl status cockpit, and we're going to show that in the demonstration in a second. And then after it's working, all you have to do is use your web browser on your host machine where VMware is running, and type in HTTPS, the IP address of your host of your VM, whatever that was when you went IP 4A, and then :9090, and that will bring you to an awesome web GUI to manage your server. And I'm going to show you this in this next demonstration. Now, this demonstration is really cool. I think you guys will like this one, and it's really easy to understand. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and talk about what it's going to do, and then we're going to show you. So first of all, in the demonstration, we're going to install Cockpit, then we're going to start it, then we're going to log into Cockpit and using a normal web browser, and then we're going to set up sudo for a normal user. So up until this moment, I've always had you go into su instead of sudo. And I've kept on saying, we haven't set up sudo for this user yet. Don't worry about it. Well, when we're using Cockpit, we have no choice. We have to set up sudo. So this is the time where we're going to set up sudo for our normal user. And I'm going to show you a very quick one-liner that's going to be able to do that for you. We're going to talk more about sudo and how that works in a future lesson, okay? I don't want to get into the weeds right now into it. That's why I kind of been avoiding it. But next week, we're going to start getting into the weeds on that one. And then we're going to configure automatic updates using Cockpit, and you're going to see how awesome and easy this is, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and watch the video.
Okay, in this lab session, I'm going to show you how to install Cockpit to manage your CentOS or RHEL 8 systems easily using a web browser. So the first thing we want to do is use the Dnf package to install it, but we're going to check out the info on the Cockpit package first. So dnf info cockpit and press enter, and it's going to give us a little bit of information on Cockpit. Here's the source RPM that's in the repos, and it just says the Cockpit web console enables users to administer GNU Linux servers using a web browser. It offers network configuration, log inspection, diagnostic reports, SE Linux, troubleshooting, interactive command line sessions, and more. That's quite a few things, and it makes these processes very easy to manage. Now, just because we're going to install a web GUI doesn't mean that you can just forget about the command line tools. Many corporations will not allow you to install Cockpit on their 1,000 servers because it's a resource waste, but It is really great system to use if you're managing just a few Linux servers and you just want other people to be able to manage it as well who might not know all the or remember the Linux commands to manage these things. So let's go ahead. The next step is we're just going to go ahead and install Cockpit, and it's as easy as this. DNF install Cockpit. Uh-oh, look at that. It won't allow me to install Cockpit without using the super user privileges. So typically in the past, we've gone ahead and typed SU. So let's just go ahead and type SU one more time. And then at the end of this lab, we're actually going to set up sudo. But I'm just going to go ahead and type SU into the root password, and now I'm in the root. So I'm going to go ahead and DNF install Cockpit as the root under SU. And wow, look at all these packages it wants to install. So I'm just going to go ahead and still say yes. And look at this, it's as easy as this. It's going out to all these packages now, downloading them from the CentOS Stream repos where the packages resolve out of the internet. And it's coming in and it's installing each one of the dependencies for Cockpit now. And there it goes. Mine's already done. Yours might take a little longer. That's okay. It will finish eventually. Now that it's installed, I want to go ahead and type systemctl status Cockpit and see if it's even running, and it's not. So by default, Cockpit is not loaded. It is inactive. So I'm going to go ahead and type systemctl start Cockpit, and there it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen here, and I'm going to go systemctl status Cockpit now and see what the status is. And now we have an active running Cockpit. And Cockpit runs on, it's an HTML, it has its own HTML web browser, but it's not Apache and it's not Nginx or anything. Cockpit has its own web browser native to Cockpit, which uses a very little resources and quite secure. So it runs on port 9090. We can just go ahead and double check. We can type SS, which and type tulpin, TULPN, space, and then the pipe character, which is shift backspace on my keyboard, and then grep, which searches for stuff. And I'm going to search for port 9090 because that's where Cockpit runs on. And there it is. I can see that 9090, port 9090, something's bound to it. It's listening on it. And if you could see over here, the process is Cockpit TLS. And that's process ID 66802. And it's running in a way of systemd. So that's great. Cockpit is running. We've determined that the port is open as well. And by the way, that's a TCP port because we're running through a web browser. And the next thing we want to do is exit out of this root user. Actually, you know what? No, we'll stay in here for now. Okay, we're going to stay in this root user for now because I want you to do something in a second. What we're going to do is we're going to check from the web browser, not on your CentOS VM, but on your host where VMware, your real computer where VMware is running. And you're going to open up a web browser and you're going to navigate to your VM's IP at port 9090. And if we did it right, we should be able to get the Cockpit web browser on our screen. Okay, I have my private Firefox window open. And you don't have to open a private window in Firefox. I just do that since I have so many sessions going on. So I open a private browsing window, which just makes it so that these cookies don't affect any other cookies on my system. But you can just use Firefox or Chrome or whatever web browser you have available. And I've typed at the top here, I've typed in https:// and then the IP of my my VM here. And then I do a colon, not semicolon, a colon with 2 dots, 9090, because that's the port Cockpit is running on. And I can go up here, and now I can go ahead and click enter. And it's saying warning, security, potential security risk ahead. That's okay. We can go ahead and click the advanced if you're in Firefox, and then go ahead and click accept the risk and continue. In Chrome, it's going to look a little different. I would always suggest that you use Firefox as a web browser anyways. It's a much more secure choice. So, always consider using Firefox instead. All the demonstrations are going to be with Firefox in this course. All right, now if you see this screen here, this is the actual CentOS Stream Cockpit login window, and the login is your username and password you use to log into your VM. It's as simple as that. So you can just go ahead and type, whatever your username is, whatever your password is. Mine's already filled in, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on login. Look at this beautiful screen in front of us. This is a way that we can administer a CentOS 8 VM using a web browser. And it's showing you, how loaded the CPUs are, the memory usage on the system, if it's healthy. Hey, it's even showing it. Hey, it's running under VMware. It knows. It's showing my host name, system time, all this great stuff. I can go to logs, but there's no logs found yet in the filter. But we're going to loop back to this at a later time in the course. Now, what I'm interested right now is the software updates, because we want to be able to do software updates on time. That's what we were just talking about in this course. And instead of using DNF Automatic, we can use Cockpit to manage this as well. But you can see when we click on this, it's giving us a little error here. Loading available updates failed. And it's failed to obtain authentication. Now, you remember with our DNF command, anytime we accessed updates, we had to be the root administrator user, the super user. So we have to give Cockpit super user access to be able to access and manage the updates on our system, because we're logged in with Ryan. We don't want to log in with root. We want to continue staying in with Ryan for security purposes. So how do we do this? We can escalate our security by clicking on this limited access button. And then it says, give me the password for Ryan. I can type in my password. And oops, look what's happened now. It's saying Ryan is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. Uh-oh. I'm getting reported. That's not a good thing. Well, it's only going to put it in the logs in my own VM, so it's not a big deal. But anyways, looks like I have to actually put myself and finally set up sudo correctly on the system to correctly use Cockpit. Okay, so let's do that now. Now I'm going to go back to my VM here, and I am still logged in with root. And if you're not, type SU and press enter and then put the root password in so that you're logged in as root. And so the next thing we want to do here is we want to do something. We want to type in echo. I'm going to clear my screen first, okay? We want to type in echo space all. Oh, oops, sorry. I want to type in. Okay, I just cleared my. I'm going to clear my screen here. Now we want to type in echo space, and then we want to type in your username, and my username is Ryan. Yours is going to be different. And we want to type in all in capitals like that, equals bracket all, close the bracket, and then space all again, and end it with another double quote. And then we want to hit shift period on my keyboard, which gives you this character right here, which is the redirection character. And then space / etc / sudoers.d / and I'm just going to put my name in here, Ryan. And so what this command is going to do, we're going to talk about the sudoers file and how to set that up correctly in a future class. Right now, I'm just getting this set up so that we can continue this portion of the class in Cockpit, okay? So don't worry if this command doesn't make sense to you. I'm just really quickly, all I'm doing is adding this line and putting it into this, redirecting it into this new file that I'm making. And if I press enter, I should be able to type cat space / etc / sudoers / and then Ryan and press enter. And I should see that one line in that file now. Now, what this is doing is it's saying Ryan is allowed to sudo or any command on this system. So if I go ahead and type exit now to get out of the root shell, I should have sudo commands. So if I do sudo, let's say, okay, remember before we did cat etc shadow in the last class and it gave me a permission denied. Let's go ahead and check that now. Sudo cat etc shadow. And it's asking me for my password. Now this password is your password, not the root password. So go ahead and type in your password and press enter. And there you go. I can now see the password file, or the where the hashes are, which you typically was only allowed to be accessed by root, but now I can use the sudo command to run a command as root with escalation. So I've now successfully set up the sudo command, and we're going to need that as we saw for Cockpit. I'm going to go back to Cockpit here. Where are we? Here we go. And now I'm going to go click that limited access button again, and it's going to ask me my password. And this is basically you saying sudo in Cockpit. And so I'm going to type in my password, not the root password, and press enter. And look at that. Cockpit now allows me to get into the administrative access section because now Ryan has sudo access. Ryan can masquerade as the root user and get escalated to the root user or super user privileges. So the first thing I want to do is it says system is up to date. Last checked, whoa, 136 years ago. Okay, I don't believe that, but we're going to just go ahead and click the check for updates, and it's going to go ahead and check for software status. And what it's doing right now behind the scenes is using DNF it's going to do DNF check dash updates if that was like the command line. It's doing it behind the scenes. It's making sure that we have all the updates correct on the machine, and it's going to go ahead and build a database for Cockpit telling it when we last checked and if there's any updates that we require. So that's just going to take a few seconds. Okay, and look, last checked a minute ago, and we're still happy. So now you see we can go ahead and select automatic updates, and that's disabled. I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button, and I'm going to say security updates only. I don't want all updates. All updates is going to update any package regardless if it's a security problem or not. I'm just concerned about the security updates right now. You can go ahead on your servers and click all updates, in the future or whatever, but we're just going to, for this lab, do security updates only because those are the vital ones. And I'm just going to leave this as default. I can say every day at 6 a.m. in the morning. And by the way, this host will reboot after updates are installed. So if you're in a corporation, you want to pick a time where if this server reboots, it's not going to affect anyone or any services that depend on it at the time it reboots. I'm going to go ahead and click Save Changes. And there it goes. Now it says security updates will be applied every day at 6 a.m. And that's all there is to it. Now you can see there's a lot of other cool stuff here that we can do. We can click on networking. We can click on accounts. There's a lot of great stuff that we can look at using Cockpit, which makes it a lot easier than going through the command line on Linux. But don't worry, we're going to come back to this time and time again through this course and explain some of these different things that you can make use of. For now, software updates is all I wanted you to look at. So if you've gotten this far, pat yourself on the back, and that's it for this lesson.
Okay, so that was how you install Cockpit and you set up automatic patches using Cockpit. We're just going to go ahead and read some of the chat here. So Lily, you posted a great question here. You're absolutely correct. You can grep for Cockpit instead of 9090. So what grep does is it takes whatever the command that how I worked it with the pipe is if you run the command and then you put that pipe after that vertical line, what it does is feed the output of all that command into the next command that you're about to run. So for instance, our command was grep. So what it does is says, here's all the output from this command I just ran, which was SS tallpin. And here's all that output, and grep, what do you want to do with it? And so it feeds it into the grep program. And so you say grep for 9090, it's going to just look through all of that output from SS tallpin and display the line with 9090. So in the same aspect, you could say grep cockpit, and if cockpit was in that list, which it was, you saw cockpit TLS, that was the process name, it would have showed you the same line and you would have been able to see that the port is 9090. I really liked how you ask that question, Lily. That's a great question to ask, and please keep asking those type of, because that's how we actually troubleshoot things in real life. A lot of the times when we log on to a server, we don't know what another group set up on that server, but we know, like, let's say, for example, Tomcat, which is an HTTPS server, might be on this server. And we'll log in, and maybe the report is, hey, Tomcat's not working, the client can't seem to get to their server, please help. And so we'll log on to the server, we'll do an SS tolpin and we'll look for the port where Tomcat should be, but sometimes they've changed the port number. So if Tomcat's like 8443 where Tomcat should be, sometimes they change it to like 7000 or something for whatever reason. There's a few places we could diagnose that. We could look in the firewall to see what ports are open and see there's a 7000 port, and it's probably something. So, but typically I would issue a command, ss tolpin pipe grep tomcat, and then it would show me, oh, okay, it's on port 7000. So that's a really good question, and I like how you asked that, because that shows that the logic in your brain is working to troubleshoot things, and that's exactly how we do it. So good question. Okay, well, allow me to log into root. Okay, fixed it. Cool. Okay, great. So yeah, you should be able to log in with the normal user to Cockpit. And Cockpit is amazing. And at first I didn't like it. The first time I saw Cockpit was a few years ago, and I was like, really? Like a web GUI to manage Linux? And then I started looking into it a bit more, and I'm like, Red Hat did a really good job here. It's lightweight. It doesn't use Apache server, which can be bloated. And that was I thought it used Apache web server to do this. And it doesn't even use Nginx, which can have some security flaws as well. It uses its own HTTP implementation for Cockpit, which is very small and only implements the things it needs to implement to show you the web browser, the HTTP. It doesn't show you everything out. It doesn't include all this stuff. Apache would include all these plugins, which would create security vulnerabilities. So in general, I really like Cockpit, and I think that it's really not cheating, because Linux is hard enough, right? Who's going to remember every single command unless this is your job working in Linux? Typically, you don't. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I've been working with, a couple decades with Linux and operating systems and Unix, so I do remember a lot of commands, but there's a lot of ones that I don't. And guess what? Google's your friend when you forget, right? But Cockpit takes that away from you, because, look at all the great stuff on here. We have SE Linux here, which we're going to be talking about. SE Linux is hard enough by itself. And we're going to show you how to manage SE Linux in the command prompt, but then I'm also going to show you how to do it in Cockpit, and you'll be able to choose whichever way you want to manage it. Again, I'm going to preface this with some companies won't allow you to install this, like larger companies. For example, we don't install Cockpit because it would just be too much on so many servers, so many resources. Even though that takes a little bit of resource, imagine multiplying that by 2,000 or 3,000. Yeah, that's a lot of money per year for hardware, CPU and RAM and all that stuff. So we try to keep it very thin. We don't install this. Our Linux guys and girls, they know how to do it in the command line. But smaller corporations, or if you're running your own Linux server, or if you're running something in like AWS and you're using like a CentOS or a RHEL 8 Plus, you can use Cockpit to manage it and just make life a lot easier. Remember, this would be a lot easier as well if I allowed you to install the GUI. But on servers, we don't do that. That takes a lot of memory, a lot of resources. And installing the GUI also creates some security vulnerabilities and risks too. And in servers, when you're hosting web pages, when you're hosting services, you don't need a GUI. You should be doing everything by command line. Okay, so fixed it, my mistake. Okay, good. I'm going to continue on here. So there's another lab, but this one's easy. Now, I'm not going to make you guys stick around for this. Obviously, this is the end of the class, so you can do this on your own time. You can refer back to this for the commands, or you can just look at the video, which is linked on YouTube as well. I put it in the weekly learning section where you can go to my YouTube clip that I made on YouTube, and hopefully it's done processing and the HD is available. And you could watch the process go again, okay? So I would definitely, if you haven't followed along, make sure you install Cockpit. We're going to be using it in all the classes that follow. I'm going to be showing you how to do it with the command line, and then I'm going to show you how to do it easily in Cockpit and manage the server using Cockpit as well. So don't worry about this. We're not gonna take some time to do this. I'm just going to go and wrap this up. So what do you need to do before next class? You need to complete all labs. Please do. They're not marked, but there's going to be an assignment. And this one, I promise you, will be given to you a little earlier than the Sunday before the next class. I got sidetracked with a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that out. And that's just life sometimes, right? When you have multiple jobs. So complete assignment 2, I will get you that very soon. It's not going to be too tough. It's going to be based on the labs that we just did, but it's going to have some differences, like, you know, maybe instead of installing uninstalling the Nano package, installing Vim, it'll be something else, right? And then you're gonna have to screenshot that just to show me in there that you did it and whatnot. I'm gonna make you, play around with Cockpit, screenshot that as well. So there's not gonna be really hard stuff here. It's gonna be pretty easy. There's gonna be a little bit of a research component, basically based on the RHEL vulnerabilities and how RHEL and CentOS classifies those vulnerabilities that I didn't teach in this class. The one thing about doing interactive labs in the class and not just having a pure theory class, which is so boring people fall asleep, is that we can't get to everything in the class. So with that, I'm going to have you do a little bit of homework and do a little bit of research, but I'm going to point you to the right websites, so you're not going to be searching around for hours. I'm going to feed it to you on a platter. You just got to go there and read, okay? And it's not a lot. Don't worry about it. So 1 minute late is 0. Please don't be late. Absolutely no exceptions. And that is it. Fini. And thank you very much, the 13 or 14 people that are stuck around. We started off with 20, but I get it. People are in different time zones. And some people, the class maybe go too slow if they know about Linux and they just want to go back to the record and skip ahead to the parts they want to, they need to complete. That's fine with me. This is a hybrid class. This is how I like my classes. You can choose to be here at any time. You can choose to review it at a later time. I always recommend that you stick during the class and try to do all the labs, because I build you up from knowing 0. And by the time you're done this class, you should have a good grasp of security for Linux. I don't just give you the basics, and I just don't throw a whole bunch of commands at you and say, there's this command, that command, this command, this command. Just know they exist. I don't do that. We practice the commands. We dive into them. We ask questions. Literally, by the time you're done this class, you could think about, taking a Red Hat certificate. There's a Red Hat certificate called Security, and I base a lot of this around that certificate. So, I mean, you wouldn't be fully ready for it, but you would be there, and I would recommend, if you do like Linux, please look at the Red Hat certifications. They are really good to get, especially that, like I keep telling you, the RHCSA, and that stands for the Red Hat Certified Systems Administrator, and that's the base level Red Hat certificate. It's not easy, even though it is basic. Linux is hard, right? Linux, especially your first cert. But if you can get that, that is the gold standard for anything in your career for Linux. And even if you're not going to do Linux, even if you're going to be a Windows admin or a network admin or a security professional, but maybe working with security devices, having a gold standard, like when I say this, I really mean this. This is the gold standard certificate for Linux. Okay, and then after that, it's the one level up from that, which is the RHCE, which is another even better gold standard for Linux. But at least if you have this, That's really going to get you far. It's really going to make a lot of people look at you a little closer if you had a lot of strong competition, because Linux is used everywhere, and being certified by Red Hat is such a good thing. It's the gold standard for Linux. Now, I get it. It sounds like I'm a Red Hat employee promoting Red Hat. I've drank the Red Hat Kool-Aid, okay? So I love Red Hat. I have Red Hat stickers. I go to all the Red Hat summits. I based my career around Red Hat, and it's done me really well. So that's the only reason I'm telling you that, giving you this advice. I wouldn't give you this advice if it didn't make sense or if it wasn't going to help you in life. So I'm not just, not trying to promote Red Hat any more than I need to, but I'm just saying it's definitely something you want to explore. If you want to get the high-paying jobs, you've got to know Linux. Okay, so this is great, guys. I really appreciate everyone sticking around. Let's see. I just want to read the comments here. And while I'm reading the comments, if you have any other questions, based on your career, based on what I've talked about, based on where this course is going, maybe some comments about the speed of the course, maybe the comments about, or maybe things you want to learn, I will dynamically, and I do dynamically create this course as we go, depending on student feedback. It's not the same every year. Can we just add the screenshot of Lab 1 in the document you have attached and submit the whole same Word document? What do you mean? Can we just submit the screenshot of Lab 1 in the document you have and attach? So, yeah, I mean, so all I want, oh, Lab 1. Okay, sorry, I'm getting confused. The document you have attached and submit that. Yeah, so if you have any, oh, I get to what you mean now. Okay, if you have any screenshots to attach or any answers, that's why I give you the docx file, is so that not a PDF, it's so that you can take that docx file and insert your answers right there after the questions and just send that whole thing. So yeah, you can do that. Yeah, absolutely. Take my docx file, insert your answers, and then rename it with your student name or your name or whatever, and just upload it and submit that assignment, the docx. Okay? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, great question. Any other questions, guys? These are great ones. I really enjoy your questions. You guys have done a really, I really enjoy it. Lily, you've been asking some awesome questions. Everyone has, really. Okay, so if that's it, if you guys don't have any questions, I will see you next week. Look for the lab in the next few days, but I won't expect this lab done for like another week or two anyways, because I understand your last lab you have till next week. So I'm not going to give you 2 labs. I'll give you 2 labs at one point, but I won't expect them done on the same week. So don't worry about that. That was my mess up. I didn't give you enough time. So now we're kind of like a lab behind, right? So even if I do post the lab tomorrow, it's still going to give you probably 2 weeks to do that instead of just 1 week. They're not going to be due at the same time. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, please email me. If you have any problems, email me and let me know, okay? Thanks very much. Oh, by the way, find me on LinkedIn and add me to LinkedIn, okay? I get to know my students very well, and I've helped many students get careers and jobs, like by giving them recommendations or whatnot, if you do well in my class. So find me on LinkedIn, make sure you add me. I will add you. Just put a note that I'm in this class, mention the class name, and always send me chats. I'm always available to talk, okay? Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll see you later.